The galaxy was full of powerful civilizations. Some had built fleets so vast that their shadows darkened entire star systems. Others had created weapons that could turn planets into dust in seconds. Among these mighty empires, there was one species that no one respected: humans. Humanity was small compared to the giants of the galaxy. Their home Earth was a fragile blue world on the edge of a forgotten spiral arm. They had no great fleets, no legendary warriors, and no ancient empire to boast of. Whenever the Galactic Council gathered, the other species would laugh behind closed doors. "They are weak," the Xipher Dominion said. "They are fragile," the Qatar swarm hissed. "They cannot survive real war," the Valari Federation whispered. Everywhere, humans were mocked. At trade meetings, they were dismissed. In political debates, they were silenced. In military councils, they were ignored. But the truth was different. Humanity was young, yes. Humanity was fragile, yes. But humanity had something the galaxy had forgotten: a stubborn spirit that refused to die. On a quiet night above Earth, Captain Liana Cruz stood on the bridge of the USS Horizon. She watched the stars through the wide glass viewport. The stars looked calm, peaceful, eternal. But she knew better. Her console showed something terrifying. The Xipher Dominion was moving its fleets closer to Sol. The Xipher were cruel and arrogant. They had ruled for thousands of years. To them, war was a game, and humans were nothing more than insects to crush under their boots. "Captain," her first officer said softly. "They're here." The screen lit up. Enormous alien warships filled the void, sharp and monstrous in design. Each ship was bigger than a Terran city. Each weapon could wipe out a human fleet in seconds. The air on the bridge grew heavy. Fear spread like cold water through the crew. Cruz stood tall. Her dark eyes stayed fixed on the incoming ships. She remembered the history of her people, their wars, their losses, their victories. Humanity had faced death before. Plagues, famine, bombs, fire, again and again they had fallen, and again they had risen. "They think we are weak," she said, her voice calm but strong. "They think we will surrender. But they don't understand us." The crew turned toward her. Some looked pale. Others trembled. But slowly, her words filled them with fire. Far away in the Galactic Council chambers, other species watched the approaching war. Many laughed. "The humans will last a day at most," one delegate said. Another smirked, "Perhaps less. Their weapons are toys. Their fleets are paper." None of them remembered the truth about humans. None of them remembered how humanity had survived centuries of self-destruction. None of them understood the power of hope, of unity, of stubborn will. As the Xipher fleet entered Earth's system, messages poured across human colonies. Families hugged each other. Children asked questions they could not understand. Soldiers strapped on armor that felt far too light against such a dark enemy. Still, no one gave up. On Mars, engineers worked day and night to strengthen old weapons. On Luna, pilots prepared fighters, knowing most of them would never return. On Earth, people prayed, not just to survive, but to prove the galaxy wrong. Back on the USS Horizon, Cruz looked at her crew and then at the stars. The enemy fleet was close now. The silence of space felt like the breath before a storm. "They mock us because they see weakness," she whispered. "But weakness is not what defines us. What defines us is what we do when we are pushed to the edge." Her hand hovered above the command console. She felt the weight of 1,000 lives, of billions on Earth, of humanity's entire future. Then with steady resolve, she gave the order. "All ships prepare for battle." Her voice echoed across the comms. Across the fleet, men and women straightened their backs. Across Earth, people lifted their eyes to the sky. The galaxy might mock humanity, but soon they would learn the truth. Humanity was ready. The darkness of space broke open with fire. The Xipher fleet entered Earth's system like a storm of steel and light. Their ships stretched across the void, cold and merciless, each one armed with weapons that could erase human vessels in a single blast. From the bridge of the USS Horizon, Captain Liana Cruz watched as the first beams cut across the black. They glowed bright, tearing through orbiting satellites and burning holes into small defense stations. For a moment, the humans froze. The power of the enemy felt overwhelming, like staring into the jaws of a predator. "Hold steady," Cruz ordered. Her voice was calm, but inside her chest, her heart hammered like a drum. She knew her people were afraid. She was afraid too, but fear had never stopped humanity before. The first Terran squadrons launched from Luna base. Their fighters were small, fragile compared to the monstrous warships of the Xi-4. Yet the human pilots flew with a reckless courage. They darted between beams, weaving and turning in ways the aliens could not predict. "Target their weak points," Cruz commanded. "Not the armor. Go for the energy cores. Go for their eyes." The humans fought not with raw power but with cleverness. Where a beam could not pierce, a missile slipped through a crack. Where heavy armor stood strong, a squadron of fighters distracted and confused. Every move was unpredictable, every strike born of desperation and willpower. On one Xi-4 ship, alarms blared. "Their weapons should not pierce us," an officer shouted. But they did. Not always, not often, but enough to sting. Enough to make the mighty Xi-4 feel for the first time irritation. Hours passed. Debris floated across the void. Burned metal, broken wings, shattered dreams. Human losses were heavy. Entire squadrons were gone. Names that would never be spoken again by their families. Yet the humans kept fighting. They refused to surrender even when the odds screamed for it. Inside the horizon, the crew worked with frantic hands. Sparks rained from broken panels. The hull trembled with each hit. A junior officer cried out, "Captain, we can't take another strike." Cruz placed a firm hand on his shoulder. "We can, because we must." Her words steadied him. Far above, the alien Admiral Thrax watched from his throne-like chair. His eyes narrowed. He had expected humans to crumble quickly like dry leaves under a storm. Yet these fragile beings fought with a stubbornness he had not seen before. They lost, yes, but every loss came with a price. Every destroyed Terran ship had taken something with it. "They fight like cornered beasts," one of his officers muttered. "No," Thrax corrected, his voice low. "They fight like something worse, like creatures with nothing left to lose." On Earth, people gathered in the streets, staring up at the night sky. The lights of battle flashed faintly above like distant fireworks. Families held each other tightly. Some prayed, others wept, but no one turned away. Humanity's fate was being written in that dark sky. In the chaos of the battle, a small Terran strike team managed to slip past enemy lines. Their mission was madness. Board an abandoned alien station near the edge of the system and turn it into a hidden outpost. If they succeeded, humanity would have a base to launch raids from. If they failed, no one would ever know. The team vanished into the shadows of space. Their courage was quiet, invisible, but vital. Humanity's strength was not only in their weapons, but in their refusal to quit, in their ability to turn hopelessness into opportunity. As the battle dragged on, exhaustion weighed heavily on every human fighter. The losses were great, but Cruz stood tall on the bridge. She looked at the endless swarm of enemy ships and whispered to herself almost like a vow. "They wanted to see us break. Instead, they will see us endure." Her eyes burned with quiet fire. Around her, the crew straightened, battered but unbroken. The first clash was not a victory. Humanity had lost many lives, and the Xi-4 still held the upper hand. But something had changed. The galaxy had expected Earth to fall in hours. Yet humanity still stood, and in that survival there was hope. The first battle had ended, but the war was only beginning. Wreckage floated silently through space. Burned metal from human ships, broken parts of alien cruisers, and the remains of brave lives lost. Earth had survived the first clash, but survival was not victory. In the days that followed, humanity pulled back to rebuild. Damaged ships limped home to Luna and Mars. Engineers worked with bleeding hands, repairing what they could with whatever scraps remained. Pilots who had lost friends stood in silence, staring at empty bunks where laughter used to live. Captain Liana Cruz walked through the medical bay of the USS Horizon. Rows of injured soldiers lay on narrow beds. Some groaned in pain, others stared blankly at the ceiling, haunted by what they had seen. She stopped at the side of a young pilot, his arm wrapped in bandages. His voice was weak but steady. Did we win, Captain?" he asked. Cruz looked at him, her throat tight. She wanted to say yes. She wanted to give him comfort. But she was a leader, and leaders told the truth. "We survived," she said softly. "And sometimes that is enough." While Earth prepared for another strike, new reports began to spread. Strange signals were picked up from the outer rim of the galaxy. Whole colonies, alien colonies, had gone silent. Ships sent to investigate never returned. The transmissions were brief, filled with static and terror. Only one word was clear in every message: swarm. The swarm was not like the Xi-4. They were not conquerors, they were not rulers. They were something worse. They were devourers, Entire worlds vanished wherever they appeared. No one knew where they came from. No one knew how to stop them. At first, the galaxy laughed at the rumors. But then Ruth arrived in burning waves. The Zarn fleet, one of the most powerful forces in known space, had been destroyed in less than a week. Their proud planets were silent now, their cities nothing but ashes floating among the stars. Panic spread like fire through the galaxy. Even the mighty Zyphor, arrogant and cruel, began to tremble. One night, Captain Cruz received an emergency call. The Galactic Council demanded her presence. When she arrived, she was greeted not with mockery but with desperation. The hall that once echoed with laughter at humanity's expense now echoed with fear. The Velari delegate, once quick to insult, leaned forward. Captain Cruz, humanity has faced horrors on its own world, wars, disasters, extinctions. You have survived where others might not. We need your guidance, the word stunned the chamber. For the first time, the galaxy was asking humans for help. Cruz rose to her feet. She remembered the voices of every soldier lost, every family broken, every sacrifice made. Her heart burned with both pride and sorrow. You mocked us for being weak, she said. Her voice rang through the chamber, sharp and steady. You laughed when we asked for a seat at your table. But weakness did not define us. Struggle did. We have been tested again and again, and still we rise. If the swarm is to be stopped, then yes, we will lead. But not for glory, not for revenge. We will lead because survival is not just for humanity. It is for everyone. Silence followed. Then slowly heads bowed. The council had no choice. They placed their hope in the species they had once dismissed. Back aboard the Horizon, Cruz stood before her crew. Their faces were tired, scarred, and heavy with grief, but their eyes shone with a fierce light. The swarm is coming, she said, and the galaxy looks to us. Not because we are the strongest, but because we know how to fight when all hope is gone. We will not fight only for Earth. We will fight for every world that still breathes. This is bigger than us now. This is survival. The crew erupted in a cheer, not of joy but of determination. Humanity, once the object of scorn, now carried the weight of the galaxy. The turning point had come. Humanity was no longer fighting only for itself. It was fighting to save everyone. For the first time in galactic history, the proud and the powerful bowed their heads to the small, fragile species they once mocked. The Galactic Council declared a new alliance, one that would unite every world, every fleet, every soldier against the coming darkness of the swarm. On Earth, bells rang across cities. On Mars, people wept openly. On distant colonies, children cheered at the news. Humanity was no longer alone, but with this honor came a heavy burden now. The survival of the galaxy rested on their shoulders. Captain Liana Cruz stood in a vast training hall on Luna Base. Around her stood soldiers of 100 different species. The Velari with their silver eyes, the Qatar with their armored hides. Even the proud Zyphor, who once called humanity insects, now stood silently waiting for orders. She looked at them all and spoke simply. You came here thinking we are weak, she said. But weakness is not shame. Weakness is a chance to grow stronger. Humanity has fought and bled for centuries. We know how to adapt. And if you stand with us, you will learn too. Together we will fight the swarm. Not as humans, not as Zyphor, not as Velari, but as one. Her words carried fire. Across the hall, heads lifted. Soldiers clenched their fists. Hope stirred where fear had lived. The training was not easy. Human pilots taught alien recruits to fly in ways they had never imagined. Where most species valued order and precision, humans valued improvisation. A fighter would veer off course, twist through impossible angles, and strike from behind. It was messy, chaotic, and deadly effective. The aliens struggled at first. The Qatar pilots crashed again and again, unused to such reckless maneuvers. The Velari grew frustrated when their careful plans collapsed. Even the Zyphor sneered, unwilling to admit they were learning from those they once ridiculed. But slowly, something changed. The aliens began to laugh when they failed, just as humans did. They began to try again, harder each time. And when they succeeded, the pride in their eyes was undeniable. Meanwhile, human engineers worked side by side with alien scientists. Old Terran missiles were combined with advanced alien energy cores. Shields were redesigned using Earth's crude but clever tricks. In dusty workshops on Mars, Weapons unlike anything the galaxy had seen before began to take shape. One such weapon was the creation of Dr. May Tan, a brilliant Terran scientist. She studied the swarm for weeks. Finally, she built a device that could disrupt the hive-mind connection between the creatures. It was dangerous, untested, and unstable, but it offered the first real chance at victory. "We take risks," she told the Council firmly. "That is what humanity does. It is how we survive." The first joint mission came sooner than expected. A small colony in the Vega system sent a desperate cry for help. The swarm was approaching. If it fell, the galaxy would lose hope. The coalition gathered its fleets. For the first time, humans and aliens stood side by side as comrades, not rivals. The mood was tense, but Cruz stood before them, her voice clear and steady. "You will be afraid," she admitted, "but so am I. Fear is not our enemy. Fear reminds us that we are alive. Use it, hold on to it, and fight. Fight not for victory, but for the lives that still wait for us to protect them." When the fleets jumped into Vega, the sky erupted with chaos. The swarm's ships were endless, living constructs that hissed and screamed as they closed in. For a moment, terror nearly broke the alliance. Then the humans charged. Their fighters dove headlong into the heart of the storm, reckless and fearless. Inspired, the aliens followed. The battle was brutal. Ships shattered. Beams lit the void like lightning. The swarm pressed hard, but the coalition fought harder. And for the first time, the galaxy fought as one. Of their ships were destroyed. More arrived like an endless tide of living darkness. For weeks, the coalition fought battle after battle. Every victory cost thousands of lives. Every step forward left wreckage behind. Humanity had united the galaxy, but even unity was not enough against such overwhelming numbers. In the War Council, leaders argued. Some demanded retreat. Others begged to hide behind shields and pray the swarm passed them by. Captain Liana Cruz stood in the center, silent, listening. Then she spoke. "There is no hiding," she said firmly. "If the swarm consumes one world, it will come for the next. There is no retreat. The only path is forward. We fight not because we are sure to win. We fight because we refuse to surrender." Her words silenced the room. No one could argue. They all knew she was right. Dr. Maytan stepped forward then, holding a small device in her trembling hands. "This," she said, "is our only chance. It can break the hive mind of the swarm for a short time. If we plant it inside their main hive ship, we can disrupt their control. It will not destroy them, but it will give us an opening." The device was unstable. It required direct placement inside the hive ship, and the mission would almost certainly be suicide. Cruz looked at her crew. She saw fear in their faces, but also determination. They had lost friends, families, whole worlds, but still they stood. She knew there was only one answer. "I'll lead the mission," she said. The coalition fleet gathered near the massive hive ship. It was a monstrosity, larger than a moon, alive with pulsing flesh and glowing veins. It breathed like a living thing, releasing swarms of smaller ships that screamed into the void. The battle began with fire. The coalition attacked with everything they had. Lasers, missiles, railguns, beams. Explosions lit the darkness like burning suns. But the goal was not to win here. The goal was to buy time. While fleets clashed outside, Cruz led a strike team inside. A mix of humans and aliens boarded the hive ship, cutting their way through twisting corridors of bone and flesh. The air was thick, wet, and alive with movement. Every step was a nightmare. Creatures burst from the walls, shrieking. Soldiers fought with blades, guns, even bare fists when ammo ran dry. Every hallway cost blood. Every door opened to more horror. But still they pushed forward. At last they reached the core chamber, a vast, beating heart of alien flesh and energy. The hive mind pulsed here, controlling the endless army outside. Dr. Tan knelt and began setting the device. Her hands shook, her face pale, but her voice steady. Almost there. Just a few more seconds. The team formed a circle around her, holding off wave after wave of creatures. Blades cut. Guns roared. Screams echoed. One by one, soldiers fell, but none broke their line. Finally, the device activated. A brilliant pulse of energy surged through the hive ship. The walls convulsed. The creatures screamed, clutching their heads. Outside, the swarm ships faltered, their movements chaotic and uncoordinated. For the first time, the unstoppable tide hesitated. Cruz stood in the chamber, covered in blood and smoke. She knew the mission had succeeded, but she also knew they might never escape. "Transmit the signal," she ordered. "Tell the fleet the swarm is open. Strike now." The message went out. Across the void, coalition ships surged forward with renewed fury. Alien captains shouted in triumph. Human pilots roared into the fray. Together they tore into the disoriented swarm, driving them back for the first time. The tide was turning. Back in the hive ship, Cruz looked at her surviving soldiers. Only a handful remained. They were exhausted, broken, but alive. She placed a hand on Dr. Tan's shoulder. "You saved us all," Cruz whispered. Tears filled the scion. Tist's eyes. "No," she said softly. "We all did. The mission had cost countless lives, but the galaxy would remember this moment forever. Humanity, once mocked as weak, had led the impossible charge. Their courage had bought hope. Their sacrifice had given the galaxy a chance. And though the war was far from over, for the first time everyone believed survival was possible. On Earth, cities that once trembled in fear now lit their skies with bright lights. Bells rang in every colony. Families cried tears of relief, though their hearts still carried pain for those who would never return. Children listened to the news, eyes wide with wonder, whispering, "Humans saved the galaxy." On alien worlds, the story spread like fire. The Velari sang songs of courage in their silver voices. The Qatar carved monuments in stone, their claws etching human faces beside their own. Even the proud Zephyr, who had once sneered at humans as weak insects, now spoke with lowered heads. For the first time, humanity was no longer the outcast. They were the example. Captain Liana Cruz stood on the balcony of the Galactic Council Hall. Below her, thousands of beings of every species gathered, their eyes lifted toward her. She wore no crown, no armor, no medal, only the uniform she had carried through battles and fire. The council leader raised his voice. "The galaxy stands because of humanity. We mocked them. We doubted them. And yet when darkness came, they became our light. Today we honor them, not as weak, but as saviors." The hall thundered with applause, roars, songs, and cries in 100 alien tongues. Cruz felt her chest tighten. She was not a woman who cared for glory, but in that moment she thought of the countless soldiers who had fallen. She thought of their laughter, their courage, their sacrifice. "This honor belongs to them," she whispered softly. Later, Admiral Thrax of the Zephyr approached her. His once proud shoulders were bent, his eyes heavy with shame. He bowed his head before her, something no Zephyr had ever done to a human. "We misjudged you," he admitted. "We saw only your size, your weakness, your youth. But your spirit is something no weapon can break. You are the galaxy's salvation, and for that the Zephyr bow to you." Cruz nodded slowly. "Do not bow to me. Bow to what we can become together. Alone, humanity is fragile. Alone, even the Zephyr will fall. But united, we are unstoppable." Thrax raised his eyes, and for the first time he smiled at a human. On the USS Horizon, the crew sat in silence as they listened to the broadcasts across the galaxy. Messages poured in from distant worlds. Words of thanks, songs of praise, promises of loyalty. Some crew members wept. Others simply stared, unable to believe what they were hearing. A young officer whispered, "They used to laugh at us, and now they cheer for us." Cruz placed a hand on his shoulder. "They cheer not because we are perfect. They cheer because we refuse to give up. That is what they need. That is what we must always give." But even as recognition filled the galaxy, Cruz knew the war was not over. The swarm still lingered in the dark, waiting, rebuilding. The fight would return, and when it did, humanity would once again stand on the front lines. Yet for the first time, they would not stand alone. Across the stars, fleets prepared not out of fear but out of hope. Humanity had shown them the way. Humanity had reminded them all of the power of endurance, courage, and unity. That night, as the stars glimmered above Earth, Cruz stood alone, her eyes lifted to the sky. She thought of every soldier lost, every sacrifice made. Her heart ached, but it also burned with pride. "We were mocked," she whispered into the silence, "but now, we are the hope of the galaxy." And with that, humanity's place among the stars was sealed forever. Years passed, but the memory of the battle at Vega never faded. It became more than a story. It became a legend. Everywhere in the galaxy, when children asked about courage, their parents told them about humans. When warriors asked about endurance, their leaders spoke of Earth. The species once called weak was now a symbol of strength. On the surface of Mars, a great monument was built. Not tall and shining, but simple. A circle of stone pillars, each carved with the names of those who had fallen. At the center, a single human hand was raised toward the stars, fingers open, reaching. Aliens came from across the galaxy to see it. Some bowed in silence. Some touched the stone with reverence. And some wept, for they saw their own sacrifices reflected in those names. Humanity had given them something greater than victory. Humanity had given them hope. Captain Liana Cruz, now older, walked among the pillars one quiet evening. Her hair carried strands of silver, her face lines of age, but her eyes still burned with the same fire. She touched the name of a friend lost long ago and closed her eyes. "We kept our promise," she whispered. "We did not give up." A group of alien children approached her. Their teacher pointed and said, "This is the human who led the fleets at Vega." The children's eyes widened, and they stepped closer. One small girl, scales shimmering in the light, looked up and asked, "Why did humans fight so hard even when no one believed in them?" Cruz knelt and smiled gently. "Because we believe in tomorrow. Even if it seems impossible, even if the world laughs at us, we fight for tomorrow. That is who we are." The children nodded and one whispered, "I want to be like a human." Cruz's eyes grew moist and she smiled. The Galactic Council changed as well. No longer divided by pride or suspicion, its members worked together. Plans were drawn not for survival but for peace. Where once every species built walls, now they built bridges. Humanity's example had lit a fire that no darkness could put out. Admiral Thrax of the Zephyr, once arrogant, now served as a guardian of unity. The Velari sang not only their ancient songs, but new ones dedicated to the human spirit. The Qatar, who once cared only for their own, now shared their wisdom freely. All of them, in their own way, carried a piece of humanity forward. But the swarm was not gone. It waited, somewhere in the cold shadows of space, growing and watching. Many feared its return, yet when whispers of dread spread, they were always met with the same words. If humanity stood against them, so can we. The fear no longer ruled the stars. The memory of Earth's courage kept it at bay. On a quiet night aboard the USS Horizon, Cruz stood by the window, gazing at the endless sky. Stars burned like candles, each one holding stories of lives and battles, of losses and victories. She thought of the past, of how the galaxy had mocked her people, how humanity had been laughed at as fragile and unworthy, and she thought of the present, how the galaxy now looked to them for guidance, how even the proudest races sought to learn from humans. Her lips curved into a faint smile. "We were never weak," she whispered to herself. "We were only waiting for the moment to show our strength." Decades later, when Captain Cruz was gone and her ship silent, the story did not end. It lived on in songs, in statues, and whispered prayers before battles. Humanity's name was written into the stars, and long after, when the swarm would rise again, every fleet, human and alien alike, would carry the same banner. Not of a single world, not of a single species, but of unity. The banner would read, "Together we survive. Together we endure. Together we are humanity." And so, the galaxy remembered. The species once mocked, as weak became eternal. Not because they were the strongest, not because they were the oldest, but because they had the heart to fight when all others had given up. Humanity became the galaxy's salvation forever. Years passed, but the memory of the battle at Vega never faded. It became more than a story. It became a legend. Everywhere in the galaxy, when children asked about courage, their parents told them about humans. When warriors asked about endurance, their leaders spoke of Earth. The species once called weak was now a symbol of strength. On the surface of Mars, a great monument was built. Not tall and shining, but simple. A circle of stone pillars, each carved with the names of those who had fallen. At the center, a single human hand was raised toward the stars, fingers open, reaching. Aliens came from across the galaxy to see it. Some bowed in silence. Some touched the stone with reverence. And some wept, for they saw their own sacrifices reflected in those names. Humanity had given them something greater than victory. Humanity had given them hope. Captain Liana Cruz, now older, walked among the pillars one quiet evening. Her hair carried strands of silver, her face lines of age, but her eyes still burned with the same fire. She touched the name of a friend lost long ago and closed her eyes. "We kept our promise," she whispered. "We did not give up." A group of alien children approached her. Their teacher pointed and said, "This is the human who led the fleets at Vega." The children's eyes widened, and they stepped closer. One small girl, scales shimmering in the light, looked up and asked, "Why did humans fight so hard even when no one believed in them?" Cruz knelt and smiled gently. "Because we believe in tomorrow. Even if it seems impossible, even if the world laughs at us, we fight for tomorrow. That is who we are." The children nodded and one whispered, "I want to be like a human." Cruz's eyes grew moist and she smiled. The Galactic Council changed as well. No longer divided by pride or suspicion, its members worked together. Plans were drawn not for survival but for peace. Where once every species built walls, now they built bridges. Humanity's example had lit a fire that no darkness could put out. Admiral Thrax of the Zephyr, once arrogant, now served as a guardian of unity. The Velari sang not only their ancient songs,